And welcome back. The Children's Village is a not-for-profit organization that's specializing in working with vulnerable children and families in New York through a variety of innovative residential and community-based programs. Now, the organization has found a path forward by advocating for change in the foster care system while shifting its focus internally. Joining me now and sharing more is the Director of Evidence-Based Services at the Children's Village, Tina Schleicher-Iannotti, and we thank you so much for joining us, Tina.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about foster care, because as we know, this is Foster Care Month, and Children's Village is definitely taken a front step for a long time in the area of foster care. But for you, just share a little bit about the agency and foster care.
Okay, so we do a number of things at Children's Village, and one of the areas of focus is, of course, foster care. And in recent times, we have also increased our programming, in the world of preventive as well as aftercare services, with the idea being that, foster care is a resort when there isn't, an immediate and other alternative to kind of keep children and families safe. And the shift to preventive work is really helping us connect with families, much earlier, in their area of needs, be able to get services to them and ultimately prevent kids from going into care, whether that be foster care through family care or foster care through residential placement. The idea is we really want that to be an area of last resort, and we also want it to be temporary. So a lot of the work that we're doing now is really focused on, finding the families that need that support so we can keep these kids out of care and back home safe with their families.
And you made that as almost a priority to say, listen, I want to make sure that we're doing something in terms of preventing children from being separated. Talk to us about what really was some of the impetus in that to say we want to prevent separation. And we also want to be able to deal with this issue of not allowing children to hit foster care.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you know, children of color are disproportionately placed in the system. And we really needed to look at sort of the practices that are helping providers connect with families and really be understanding, culturally respectful, and identifying how to leverage their strengths instead of just focusing on problems or vulnerabilities. This is about looking at how do we build someone up and really appreciate, who they are as a parent and as a caregiver, and just, supporting the structure of that, family's, natural unit. I think one of the reasons we shift to this focus is because we know that, separation is trauma. Kids in foster care often do not have the same outcomes as kids that are able to avoid foster care placements. We know that their education suffers. We know that there's, difficulties that are just, challenging based on that separation, the instability, the multitude of factors that go into all kinds of, changes, that can really be traumatic, but for both the children as well as the caregivers. And so, again, if this can happen, this is what we're looking to do. The one thing we really know is that service providers should be temporary.
Right.
Like, we are not here to replace families. And while there are wonderful organizations like Children's Village that do have residential and foster care support, we know that we should be temporary. Like, we shouldn't be replacing. We should provide that structure and support while it's needed, but with the intention of getting a reunification as quickly as possible and never keeping a child in care any longer than absolutely necessary.
But talk to me about in-home family therapy, because that type of counseling, that type of therapy has proven to be effective. Share with me a little bit about the work that you're doing there, and are you noticing more impact in that area?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, our program has expanded, considerably over the last few years, and we focus on evidence-based services, which our primary models of treatment are multisystemic family therapy as well as functional family therapy. And this really is kind of like the cutting edge tools. This is like the highest end technology when it comes to providing family treatment, with the idea that we can build on a base of, traditional family therapy branch that out into looking at the community and the other systems that are connected to families, and then incorporating strategically elements of CBT, DBT, and motivational enhancement strategies, which we're kind of taking the best pieces and kind of organizing them to meet the family's needs in their home and working kind of around their world. One thing that can happen in treatment is that it's hard to get to, it's hard to access, it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy. And the way our programs work is that we bring the service to the family. We do this in their home, in their natural environment, anywhere in the community or throughout their extended family ecology, wherever it kind of makes sense to partner and collaborate with them, as well as the people who are important to them. So it's not just about that parent or that child. It's going to be looking at how they live and organize their life, and how do we bring in that supportive network to make sure that once we start stepping away, that the family is feeling supported, that they're feeling connected, and there really isn't any barrier to accessing the services. We don't want educational plans to be disrupted because of appointments. We don't want employment to be disruptive because of appointments. We don't want necessary bonding family activities to be disrupted because of appointments. And so it's really important that we kind of work in tandem with the family and how they're kind of living their life day to day to make sure they get what they need without having to sacrifice something else that's equally important.
Talk to me a little bit about poverty, because that's a huge thing that a lot of families that you're dealing with and you service are dealing with. Poverty, and then you also have neglect, and I understand that there's a correlation between both poverty and neglect when it comes to this issue of foster care.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, parents are often put in a very challenging position to be like, do I spend time at home with my child, with my family, and following up on all the, needs that a child has? Or do I have the ability to work or to, find supportive systems and resources and try to provide for them? I mean, these things are often competing needs, and this is why, it really does kind of take a village. We know the impacts of poverty, and people have to have creative solutions around just being able to kind of sustain day to day living. And so we also want to make sure that we're connecting our families to those resources in the community, that we are looking at how the whole family ecology and support network can really pair, partner, and work in tandem together. And sometimes it means creative solutions related to, sharing childcare or being able to even cohabitate and reorganize, the family structure. More and more, we are working and supporting families who have multi-generational homes because it's part of what makes the system work. And while there may be, kind of challenges with that, at the same time, it's the best way to help them kind of self-sustain and figure out what their pathway is to move forward. We've had families that, they struggled because, they're trying to hold down two jobs. And maybe part of the solution isn't sending them to parenting class. I mean, the solution is thinking about, how do I help this family find and right size their employment needs, their education needs, their training needs, and actually be able to find maybe, a better single job versus just adding a third job, into the works. And what will it take to get them from point A to point B, so that way they can work in a more self-sustaining kind of way.
Yeah. Tell me, what have you been seeing in regards to foster care in New York? Have you seen marketable improvement in the way the process has gone? Can you tout that there's possibly some progress here?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say one of the things we've noticed is just a more collaborative approach in general, as well as access to, just more appropriate resources that are treatment focused and not just case management services. I think historically, what I would say like back in the day, it would not be unusual for, systems to try to focus on quantity over quality. It's kind of like they would identify every possible need and just try to kind of like throw more at it, like do this appointment, do this service, take this. And what we find is that's overwhelming for families. And when you're bringing in more evidence-based treatments and you're making them accessible to families that are in the foster care system to support that reunification, it's more like having that one-stop shopping center. The treatment's going to mold to the family instead of the family having to conform to the treatment. And I think that's one of the ways that we're seeing better outcomes, we're seeing stronger outcomes, we're seeing more kids in prevention and less kids going from prevention into foster care. And so I think those are the things that are just kind of really helpful, because more is not always better you know
Right. And so, as you look to the future, what's your take on the future in terms of how things are going to be working out with foster care system? Obviously, as you said, you want to see hopefully less, I should say, kids finding themselves into the foster care system. Talk to us a little bit about the future plans.
I think the future is looking bright. We're, making relationships and preventive, so that way even reunification and aftercare services can be provided. And, this helps, kids and families get reunited more quickly. We look at the work that has been done, to support them if there has been an outplacement. And then we can start a reunification plan sometimes 8 weeks before a youth might actually, return to the care. So we can work simultaneously in tandem, with both the parents as well as the youth, to kind of look at how things may be different, what this treatment's going to be like, and kind of bring people together in a very planful way. I mean, oftentimes, kids can go from placement or care into the home, and it's kind of like that shock to the system where they're back and they're trying to start, all over again. And I think having that transition plan that's really mindful and kind of takes its time with the integration, then we're going to see people more prepared.
Yeah.
Families that are ready to have their kids home. And I know that it can be scary. Sometimes kids have extremely challenging behaviors that have led to outplacement. We work with families that, have struggled to manage things like substance abuse, sex trafficking, violence, aggression, gang involvement. Some of these higher end behaviors that are even frightening for parents. And being able to take a step by step process and sort of ready themselves to receive the child, to have their behavior plans, to have their safety plans, to have the things that they need to help them be confident and be empowered and say, we can do this together and move forward. That's what we're looking to do. And I think, just having access to these services is something that's going to, support kids being in care a shorter amount of time, get home sooner, and for families to be more ready for them. And I think all of that can only give us positive outcomes.
Tina Schleicher-Iannotti, thank you so much for being with us. And certainly, she's the Director of Evidence-Based Services at the Children's Village. Thank you so much for sharing.
All right. Thank you so much.
All righty. Now, for more information, we encourage you, visit the website at childrensvillage.org.